My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord.
Good morning. You're very welcome. Please come in.
So, Sister Assumpta, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the beginnings of the convent in Bermondsey.
Yes, I'd be very happy to do that because my story of Bermondsey is all to do with oral history, which I've learned from the elderly sisters for whom I often did little tasks in the evening after school. And this is really very precious to me because Bermondsey, when the sisters came, was poverty-ridden, poor, and they got into their heads straight away that they had to address some of the problems that were obvious to them. And one of those difficulties was to provide good, solid education for the children in the locality. And the children were, they were families whose dads worked in the docks. And in those days, there was no NHS support. So if a dad was ill in the docks, he didn't get any unemployment benefits. And the sisters would often tell me that they would go around in the evenings with loaves of bread up their big sleeves to give food to the children for their supper. And Dad would be lying in a settle bed in the kitchen in great distress and pain and difficulty. So the presence of the church was a great encouragement to the local people, especially to the dockers and their families. And the sisters were very proactive in addressing those needs, visiting the sick in their poor homes, bringing them sustenance, and above all in their efforts to provide a very good education. And education, as we know, breaks the cycle of poverty.
Thank you. Sister, I wonder if you could just explain what's going on in this very old photograph here.
I'd be delighted to do that because this is Parker's Row, and going back to the 1800s, this is how people would have traded their items in a cart. You know, there were no big vehicles available in those days. People had to pull carts after them if they wanted to buy something or sell something. And these people here would be selling bits of wood for firewood, or items to help to make a gate, or selling bread, selling anything. They sold everything from a cart. And this picture is very special to me because that's what I found in Nairobi when I went to work there. People selling their goods, delivering their trade stuff in carts similar to this. And I find it very exciting and very precious. Even there you can see the milk lorry, or not a lorry, the milk cart delivering bottles of milk around Parker's Row. And that was Parker's Row was a very, very busy street. It was the main street in Dockhead because there was no joining up of Tooley Street and Jamaica Road. That was closed, and that was a footpath, a footway only. So this was where all the activity happened, Parker's Row. It was the main road for traffic, it was the main road for pedestrians, it was the main road for cyclists, it was the main road for anything that needed to move.
So, Sister Catherine McAuley, as I understand it, was here in Bermondsey. Could you tell us a little bit about her visit in 1839?
Oh yes, I would be delighted to do that because Word spread like wildfire about the foundations Catherine had made in Ireland and the wonderful work that she was doing to address freedom from women who were in danger of prostitution and providing care for the sick and education for poor children. So the priest here in Dockhead got to hear about this, and he talked to the local bishop in Southwark, and they decided to invite Catherine over to Bermondsey to make a foundation. And they set to work to build this convent here, and the architect was Pugin. And as you see, it's a very beautiful building, and Catherine was excited about coming with her sisters. Among them was Claire Moore, and she said, gathered up songs for the journey and crossed over from Dublin to Liverpool, and the train journey down, arriving at London Bridge at 7 o'clock on the 19th of November 1839 in the pouring rain and the dark. And they came into this unfinished Pugin building with no heat, and all they could do was say night prayer, take a cup of tea and go to bed. And Catherine in her letters wrote, "I do not like this Mr. Pugin. He was determined that we would not look out through the windows." That was her impression of Pugin architecture, which of course is renowned far and wide.
Thank you. So Sister Assumpta, could you explain who this lovely young sister is in this oil painting?
Oh, I would be delighted to do that. This is Mother Claire Moore, whom all the Bermondsey sisters would rightfully say she was the first superior of the Bermondsey congregation. She was born in Dublin, Ireland, got to know the works of Catherine, what Catherine was doing in Beggar Street, and she probably would have met Catherine at Mass at the Carmelite Church in Clarendon Street, Dublin. She was very impressed, and she began to help as a volunteer, and later on entered in Beggar Street, made her vows there. And when the parish priest of Bermondsey and the Archbishop of Southwark invited the sisters to come over to provide education for the children, mainly of the dockers, and to be a presence in the Holy Trinity Parish, Dockhead, Catherine brought Sister Claire Moore with her, and Claire became very proactive in the area. She responded to the call of the Archbishop for volunteers to go to the Crimea, and she became a very dear friend of Florence Nightingale. And sadly, she had to leave before the war ended because she wasn't very well. But Claire and Florence were never parted with their friendship. And when Florence arrived in Portsmouth, she said to her driver, "Please, please take me to see my dear nuns in Bermondsey." And we have 47 letters of Florence Nightingale to Claire in our Heritage and Archive Centre, which are not open to looking at with two bare hands. Coming back from the Crimea, Claire went from strength to strength, and she was very proactive in visiting the sick in Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital, in helping the local bishop to write letters and to do endless tasks for him. But not only that, she made several foundations, one down in Eltham, which was a very needy place where the ministry of the Mercy Sisters was so badly needed. And this house here in Bermondsey is always delighted to celebrate Claire's anniversaries and to visit her grave up in Kensal Green, which we do on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Oh, look, I've just discovered Lady Barbara Eyre's jewels here. I must tell you something about it, that interesting woman. Father Peter Butler had a group of women helping him with different activities in his parish, and they lived a semi-religious life over in a house in East Street, which is about 5 minutes walk from our front door. And among them was Lady Barbara Eyre, belonging to the famous Eyre family. And it's interesting to note that Eyre Square in Galway is called after her family. Anyway, talking about her jewels, she decided that when the Sisters of Mercy came, she was very impressed by the different activities that they were undertaking in the parish, and she wanted to be part of that community. And she volunteered to enter and went through her novitiate. And on the day of her reception, Catherine was still here, and she was upstairs in one of those small bedrooms, and Catherine went up to tell her that her family had arrived, and she said to Catherine, "Oh, get me down my hat box from the wardrobe." And Catherine, with all humility, climbed up in a chair and got down her hat box, whatever kind of a hat it was, I don't know, and she said thank you to Catherine, and Catherine left. But later on in the day, during the reception ceremony, she realised she had spoken to the founders, and she was overcome with remorse and couldn't stop apologising for, you know, her lack of respect for the founders. But Catherine, being a woman of humility, forgave her as quickly as she got her hat box down from the top of the wardrobe. But these are Lady Barbara Eyre's jewels, which she brought with her when she came to the convent, and when we had the place redecorated, we brought them out to display. And I remember one day a cheeky priest, when I showed him round the centre, he said to me, "And Assumpta, what did you do with your jewels when you came to the convent?" And I assured him mine were Woolworth's best.
So that was 1839, and here we are 100 years later in 1939, at the start of the Second World War. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think the Second World War caught people by surprise. And the St. Joseph School was built with about 400 children in the school. And one day the sisters got a word to say they had to evacuate the children, and they had to be up at London Bridge at 9 o'clock in the morning with their 400 children, and they would be taken down to Lewes in Sussex. Now, Lewes in Sussex was a very anti-Catholic place where they used to burn an effigy of the Pope once a year. So when the sisters arrived there with all these hundreds of children, they didn't get a very warm welcome. And the anti-Catholic atmosphere projected itself very seriously, and the sisters did not feel welcome or comfortable. But you know, it's like everything else. When you get to know people, your mind changes about them. And gradually, over the years that they were away in Lewes, the people befriended them, respected them, loved them, and supported them. And I remember as a young sister in Whitstable, a man and his wife coming all the way from Lewes for the funeral of Sister Bega, who made a huge impression on them. And they wanted to come and say thank you to the Mercy Sisters and pay their respects to Sister Bega. So we must never give up hope. Affection, love, support, a smile and understanding changes so much. And this picture here is a picture of devastation, and it tells us what Bermondsey was like when the bomb struck, destroyed the convent, destroyed the presbytery and killed 3 priests. The local authority came and made the sisters leave. There were only 2 sisters in the convent. Remember, the others had evacuated, and they were told to get out. And the local authority came and boarded up the old convent. And when the people, you know, there were no mobile phones in those days. Everything's on mobile phone now. I can hear about the fires in California on my mobile phone from my sister. But that was not the case. Communication was not as great as it is today. So when the people came to Mass on the Sunday, there was no church, no priest, and no convent, and no sisters. And that was a great blow to people who had learned to love the church, love the sisters, and depended on them for support and help at all times and in all crises. And here we have this picture of what Bermondsey looked like. And I remember as a young sister being asked to accompany Mother Thomas More up when the church got back to it like a shed. It was like a shed, and Sister Thomas More came up to do the Children of Mary meeting once a month on a Sunday. I have a picture in my head of devastation, misery and destruction, the like of which I have never seen even in Africa in worst conditions.
So what happened when the war was over?
Well, when the war was over, people started coming back slowly to Bermondsey, and there was no convent, and it was important that the children would be taken back into school and given a regular timetable and some stability to their lives. So Mother Columba, God rest her, she bought a big property down in Chislehurst, and the sisters who taught in St. Joseph's Dockhead lived in Chislehurst and were taken by taxi every morning up to St. Joseph's School and taken back again in the evening. And eventually there are 2 little cottages in George Row, and Mother Columba bought those 2 cottages and a community set up there so that the sisters who were in teaching were able to live there. Then in the meantime, a big discussion went on about trying to get planning permission to build the convent back in Dockhead. Canon McManus got to hear that the road was going to open up between Tooley Street and Jamaica Road. So he asked Mother Columba if the sisters would prefer to live in the quieter road, which would be Parker's Row, so that they would be less disturbed by traffic, and the church would be in the centre of a thoroughfare. They exchanged title deeds, and it was decided to rebuild here in Parker's Row. But that was not as easy as it sounds, because the local authority were very reluctant to give planning permission to the sisters to rebuild in Bermondsey. They wanted to build high-rise flats to accommodate new people coming into the area, people who had lost their homes during the war, etc., etc. So Mother Thomas More was the superior then, and through the help of solicitors, she took the local authority to the High Court. Again, no mobile phones in those days, and sisters were semi-contemplative, going about their ministry, but certainly not going to courts to hear the result of judgments. But the doorbell never stopped over in George Row all day saying, "You've won your case, you can claim permission to get planning permission to rebuild here in Dockhead." So that started with the wonderful architect and with sisters who were experienced in what was necessary for a modern convent and a beautiful chapel. And this is a picture behind me, is the Sunday in which we laid the foundation stone. And I'm there somewhere in that picture. And that was in about 1958. And it took, I think, about a year for the convent to be built. And I remember the day we opened the convent here in Dockhead, we all in Mercy schools in the area all had the day off, and we all came to celebrate and give thanks and to have a happy day together and to be at peace that we were at last back where Catherine started, where Claire Moore lived, and where the people of Bermondsey wanted mercy in their midst. Very little remains of the old convent, but here we have the Calvary, and that was left hanging in the chapel and not destroyed the night of the bombing. And we've looked after it very well, and when the chapel was redesigned in 2006, this Calvary went away to Liverpool to be restored and repainted. And it's with great gratitude that I look up there, because it's part of my inheritance as a Bermondsey sister. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this picture. That's Sister Rosemary there, a lovely young sister who worked in the kitchen and fed the poor men at the door, which was a custom here in Bermondsey. From about 2 hours every morning, poor men would get sandwiches and tea. And Mother Thomas More was one of the people most active in doing that ministry. But sadly, the police stopped us one day and said it was too close to St. Joseph's School and we couldn't continue that. So a pledge was made that the sisters would make a major donation to the Manor Centre, and every Christmas. This is what we still do. That's our big funding, is to the Manor Centre. And we give a cup of tea to 1 or 2 poor people every week. But the majority of men don't come here anymore. They have been directed to the Manor Centre. And that was dear Rosemary, who died at a very young age of cancer and is buried in Ireland.
So Sister Assumpta, perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit about your own mercy life.
I've had a great life. I've had the most wonderful opportunities to serve people, to teach children, to visit the sick, to do hospital ministry, and one bit is better than the other. And I was brought up in a very devout Catholic family where we prayed together every day, and I went to a small rural school where we learned beautiful things like poetry and music. And then when I was 11, I went to the convent school run by the Sisters of Mercy. And I was always so impressed by the work that they did. They'd be out after school in the evening visiting needy families, taking them food. And the children who might not be able to have a lunch to school in the day, one of the sisters came over from the convent with a big tray of sandwiches, and I used to hope my mother would forget to give me my lunch so that I would be able to taste some of those lovely sandwiches. And we got a very good education. I remember especially being well taught in the aspects of grammar. I will never forget full stops, capital letters, commas, all the rest of it. That's it, and I'm very critical to this day when I hear people making grammatical errors, because we were so checked in that convent school for our grammar and our English. I had a very happy time there. My mother went to the expense, sold eggs so that I could have music lessons. Well, I'm sorry, which was wasted on me, sadly, though I did get up to grade 3 in the piano by some miracle or other. I entered the Sisters of Mercy in Chislehurst, and it was a very big, gracious old house full of grandeur, and went through the novitiate under Mother Thomas More, who was very strict. But I will have to say about her, she never asked us to do anything that she wouldn't do herself. And eventually I went to Sedgley Park College to train to be a teacher with Dolores, who sadly went to God a few months ago. And my first teaching job was in Eltham, southeast London, in that lovely building on the High Street. I was put in to teach senior girls, and I was not trained for senior girls, but I had such a class of obedient, good girls. They were just so wonderful. And I didn't have a watch or a clock or anything, but they used to look out through the window at Heinz Clock. Heinz was a big departmental store on the High Street, and they would say, "Sisters, time for play. Sisters, time to go home." And they called the tune with regard to the time for whatever it was, because they could look out through the window. Happy days, wonderful teachers, there purely for the good of the pupils. But that then ceased being all-age school and became a primary school only, and a new secondary modern school was built. Eventually I was moved down to Whitstable, and I missed London so much. I prayed when I went to the governor's meeting that they wouldn't accept me. I didn't like Whitstable, I just wanted to be back with those lovely people in London. And God's ways are most peculiar. I went in to this this room with a lot of governors sitting there, and they were talking when I went in, and they said, we'll just finish this conversation, we'll see you in a minute. They didn't interview me. The parish priest stood up and he said, we are absolutely delighted to have you to come to teach in St. Mary's School. I went out and I said, all is lost. All my prayers that they wouldn't accept me have failed, and here I am. And I stayed there for 30 years, making the most wonderful contacts with parents, children. I got a bicycle. I would take our community to the sick on my bicycle, visit the local hospital. I taught with wonderful teachers, among them dear Sister Norma, and I was very happy, and I still have contact today with past pupils. Oh, and this is myself with my class down at the seafront collecting shells. Imagine today it would be penalised if you went out with more than 10 children. There were about 48 children in that group, and I took them all on my own down to the beach, and not one of them pushed a step out of place. They held hands, they followed my instructions, and they behaved impeccably. So I had happy days in Whitstable. And then I was asked to be superior in in Swanley. And that was a very lovely experience. And then one day, Sister Imelda rang up in the afternoon, and she said, are you sitting down? I said, no. Why should I be? Well, I'd like you to be sitting down because I have something to ask you. The team would like you to go to Palazzola to be the leader of the community and the project there. I said, oh, I could never do that. I said, I couldn't. I don't even know where Palazzola is. And she said, it's south of Rome, and I think you would fit in very well there, and you would do a very good job. And she said, I'll give you a week to think about it, but you are not to tell the other sisters. So when the sisters came in from school, I had their dinner ready, and they found me very silent and demure. And Juliana, God rest her, said to me, Assumpta, what's up with you today? You're not talking. And I said, oh no, I'm just thinking about something. And do you know what? I said, do you mind if I don't cook the dinner tomorrow? I'd like to go away somewhere and have a day of prayer. And they said, oh, you've got holy all of a sudden, etc., etc. Anyway, I went off and I thought about it. And I sat in the church and I said to myself, there's no point waiting for a week. I made a vow of obedience. I will do as I was told. And then, you know, talking about the whole hog, then she said to me, this was about Tuesday, she said to me, Mother Imelda said to me, would you be ready now to leave on Saturday if we book the flights for you? Tell my family, fold up the community, etc., etc., and be ready to go on the Saturday. That was a big effort actually, but the sisters were so amazing. There was Bridie and Jerome and Elizabeth Wright, and Juliana, they were all in the community, and they couldn't have been more supportive in helping me. So they booked my ticket and I took myself off to Rome all on my own. I'd never been that far before. And I arrived at Palazzola on the 7th of October, about 5 o'clock in the evening. And the students from the English College, about 100 of them, were making their annual retreat. And I was faced with this big church of young men preparing for the priesthood. And to cut a long story short, Palazzola was in the middle of renovations, and some of the crockery was broken and we had very little, and which was very peaceful, very peaceful. And improvements were made. I worked with the Piagentini family and with the sisters in community, and I had many great privileges. I met Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, 5 times and ate lunch with him once. And one day I remember Sister Anselm Nugent was driving up the Via Conciliazione, and I was looking at something in my handbag, and I said to myself, I've passed St. Peter's, and I didn't even look up at it. You know, what a privilege it was to be able to be there. But I realised it wasn't forever, and I wouldn't want to keep doing that. So I came back to Swanley, to Croydon, and I was asked to start a little project for carers, which was very successful and very good. And Sister Barbara Dooley came to stay with us on leave from Kenya for a little while, and she said to me, Assumpta, you would love to come and work in Kenya. You'd love to work with Sister Mary Colleen. So I asked Sister Pascal if I could do that, and she gave me every blessing. And she said, go for 3 months. And 3 months extended to 6 months, and I came back to evaluation with the team, and I asked to go for a longer time. And if you were to ask me today, where is my heart? I would say it's in Kenya. The poverty that we witnessed, but the wonderful work being done by the Sisters of Mercy is so encouraging. I remember one day on the street, I found 3 little Muslim girls with very little clothing on them. Kule, Dahaba and Diram were their names. The father used to beat the mother in the slum, and they ran away. The mother ran away, and then he threw the girls out of the slum and said, girls are useless, get out on the street. I found them on the street, and we took them into the orphanage. And the eldest, Kule, was very bright, and we had a man out from Dublin pushing in IT for us, and she followed him around everywhere, asking him umpteen questions. And he said to himself, my family must do something for this girl, she's so clever. And his family, we paid for her to go to secondary school. His family paid her university fees. She got a law degree. My friends and family helped with her books and her lodging. She validated her law degree at the Kenya School of Law. And the Irish family in Dublin had relatives in Washington who knew Obama. And Obama took her into the White House from 2009 to 2010. Where she did an internship, but interns don't get paid. But she stayed with this Irish family. And when she was at Nairobi airport on the way out to America, she called me, and I said, Kule, have you some money? And she said, I have $20. I said, Kule, have you got a warm jacket? This was November. No, she said, is it cold in Washington? Washington is freezing in November. Anyway, she's now back, and she works in the judiciary in Kenya, prosecuting unreliable officials, and she gets in touch with me regularly, and I have lovely photographs of herself. But her sister Diram had sickle cell, and she got a baby, and she died in childbirth. And Kule went down to Mombasa, found her mother, made her mother come back and look after this baby who was handicapped. And with her money from the judiciary, she was able to build a house for them up country, which is a lovely story from sitting on the streets of Nairobi. Yeah, so that's about it. And I'm now back here, living community life, and I have the great privilege of doing chaplaincy at St. Thomas's Hospital every Monday. It's an amazing privilege, an amazing opportunity to sit with the dying. And this week I'm with a family and their little baby. The baby was born without one of its ventricles, and the mother was told this in the scan. So they brought the mother over from Derry, Northern Ireland, to have the baby in St. Thomas's, because there's only 7 surgeons in the whole world who could do this operation, and one of them is at St. Thomas's. Now, I've been with that baby for hours, once a week since last October. And last week, all the family came over from Ireland. The parents are there all the time, and they told me the baby is very short time to live, and they're going to be taking her back to Oma in Northern Ireland probably tomorrow to die there with her family. They're a very religious family, very prayerful people who want me to pray and to be with them. And I certainly have lost my little heart to Rosie. She's beautiful. Yeah.
Sister, you're in your 90s now. Do you ever see yourself retiring?
Well, Sisters of Mercy never retire. I mean, I wouldn't like to be sitting in a care home with people bringing me cups of tea. I'm well able to get my own cups of tea, get up in the morning, do my washing, make my bed, clean my room, and I'm able to be a community person and follow the community routine, and happy to do that.
Thank you.
My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord. You are God of love and tenderness. I place my trust in you, and I ask that you grant me acceptance of your will, loving Lord. My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord. Take from my heart all painful anxiety. Let nothing sadden me but sin, and then let my delight be hoping to see your face, loving Lord. My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in